Hey, friends, welcome back. It's Sharon Brubaker with Healing Starts with the Heart. I am bringing you back to part two. You're not even going to even hear from me because this story is just so amazing. And I just feel like for every griever out there, so many times when you come to me and you have a grief from a loss due to death, there's so many of us that have PTSD, trauma, brokenness, fear, a heart that just has other um, experiences in our life. And I just think that this is the perfect guest to help us with that. I would like to introduce you to Janine Rashidi. And this is part two. If you guys haven't listened to it yet, please go back to part one where she tells her story. Here we're talking about healing, her healing journey. And so you won't be hearing very many questions from me because she's so amazing. And I want you guys to hear all of this story. So, where we left off is that you had moved back home, you become a massage therapist, and that was the first time you start to really understand the word trauma. And you're
Yeah.
having massages, and the trauma is starting to unfold. So if you would take us from there, that would be great. And but most importantly, we want to hear about the book, how you came about that, and anything that you'd love to add.
So it took me, I want to say the massage education was about 9 months. But I had met a chiropractor who hired me before I had finished. So I already had an in, which was great. And very quickly, though, I realized that she was charging a rate that was astronomically higher than what I was getting paid. And I realized the way to do this is on your own, Janine, not work for somebody else. So I met another chiropractor that was renting the rooms in that place. And I asked her, how would I go about doing this? Can you teach me? And so she had a great idea. She said, why don't you rent the room? And what we'll do is we'll figure out what the rent is based on how many clients you're bringing in. That was the perfect scenario. So in a very, very short amount of time, I had a full practice, which was great. So I could choose my own hours. I had money coming in. So I, was able to move out of my parents' home, get an apartment. So, and this was 20 years ago. So in that 20-year period, clients start coming in and they naturally start processing on the table. They start telling me about their trauma
Yeah.
and all of their life's problems. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm probably the last person that could help you. Well, come to find out, no, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So once I finally stopped questioning it, I sought out more healing tools under the notion that it was going to help my clients. It didn't occur to me yet that that was also going to help me, right? But that's usually how us healers get into this profession. So, I learned many different things. I realized that while I love massage, I felt that massage was palliative or had temporary results for people who had chronic pain. And it did not feel right to me to be profiting off of pain like that. So I sought out more conscious modalities that allowed me to teach people how to self-treat, how to use their body differently. I was trained on how to help people process their emotions while doing some acupressure points. Many different types of modalities that further enhanced my ability to support a client. But also, I had to go through the healing process myself. So when I think about it, the amount of energy it took to be healing myself while showing up for others, it kind of blows my mind when I think about it. But that's, obviously what was supposed to happen. And I remember having a conversation with my uncle, probably maybe a couple of years into my career. And he said, Janine, you really should write a book. And I thought, yeah, who has time for that? And who's going to read a book that I write? And my own inner self-talk was not very kind. When I left that marriage, I was morbidly obese. I was about 240 pounds and I was not very healthy. So not only did I have the journey of weight loss, of figuring that out, but I also was really just living in survival mode. Need to pay the bills, need to make the money, need to raise the kids. That was it. So the idea of writing a book seemed luxurious and not something that would ever happen in this life. But I went through my journey. I experimented with a couple more marriages after that. And I've decided, I think I'm going to hold off on the marriage thing. I've tried it 3 times. I'm divorced 3 times. I'm only 46, but you know what? Look at what I had to use as a reference for a relationship. You know what I mean? So while other people might want to judge me or shame me for it, you know what? I don't feel ashamed of it because I learned a lot about myself and about others and what I attract into my life. And that was probably the biggest reason why I wanted to write my book. Was one, I knew that I needed to get out of the marriage that I was in. And I also wanted to inspire people. And I feel like often at times we do not make a decision in our life because we're afraid of judgment. We're afraid of not having the tools, not having the finances, you name it. There's always a reason. And so that's really what I wanted to do. Well, by that point, my daughters were already out of the house, and COVID hit. So it was the perfect time. I couldn't see clients. I mean, I eventually figured out how to do it online, because, throughout this journey, I also started studying the science of Ayurveda, which I'm just finishing up my dissertation in to be a doctor of Ayurveda. So I was able to, do the mental emotional counseling online, as well as the Ayurveda health and wellness counseling. And that's when I realized now is the time to write this book. And so I did. And what's interesting is when you send something out into the universe, usually you'll get some sort of feedback.
Yeah.
And so I had this thought, okay, I'm going to write this book. I don't know how to write this book. So I wake up at 3 a.m. and pick up my phone, because we all know that's what you're not supposed to do. And there's an ad on Facebook that says, write your book outline in 24 hours and only pay $7. And I was like, well, that's a pretty easy investment. Let me try that. And so I did. And I was like, wow, I have a full outline here. And so then, I get on a call with this company called Self-Publishing School. And I loved the idea. I loved the motivation. And I thought, yeah, this is what I want to do. And so I invested and I learned all of the ins and outs of not only how to write a book, how do you publish a book? How do you market a book? And here we are today. It reached a bestseller right away when it was published. And it actually has reached bestseller status 6 times since then. And I haven't done anything as far as advertising for it, mainly because I've been going through a divorce and haven't had the time to do it. So I'm grateful that it has, achieved what it has achieved. And I think what I love the most are the messages that I get from people through social media or by email, letting them know how much it changed their lives.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the best thing about writing a book is if you're changing lives, that's absolutely the most uplifting thing I think we could do.
One of the things that I believe from hearing your story and that is that it was spiritually divine intervented. Like it was spiritually guided from way back. Like this was supposed to be your
Yeah.
journey.
Right.
One in 2006, my nephew Austin drowned at the lake, and what got me into doing the grief work. And prior to that, I would always often say, what is the difference I'm going to leave on this earth? And because we should always leave it in a better place than we found it, right?
Yeah.
And what is the difference? What change am I going to leave here? And I believe and I truly believe from hearing your story that this is spiritually divine intervention coming for us. It's for us.
Yeah.
Okay, question. Do people consider it woo woo, your work?
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
I try to stay away. I'm totally a fan of the woo woo. However,
Me
it's
too.
not always acceptable. So what I have found is that it's important to find common language
Yeah.
that people understand. So I keep it very, I'm not even sure what the right word to use is, but I try to keep as much woo woo out of it.
Yeah.
So that there is more of an invitation for people to come. And then when one expresses their own woo woo ness, then I can share that as well.
You can share it. Exactly. I love that. How are your children doing? Share with us how they're doing.
Oh man, they're doing amazing. So my eldest, who lives close to me, She is managing what's that called? We're a landscape company. So she's managing a landscape company, but on the side, wants to be an entrepreneur. So
Wow.
she's gotten her license so that she can basically sell different types of policies to people that help them with their financial security. It could be like a universal index life insurance policy. If I talk any further, I have no idea what I'm saying. That's her language, not mine. And then, she is married to a wonderful man. I really like him as well. And they have 2 children. So I get to see my grandkids often. And then my youngest, she had joined the army where she met her husband, and they have 3 kids together. And so I am usually visiting them roughly about 4 times a year.
So you broke the chain.
Yes.
You broke the chain. Do you know
Yes.
how huge that is?
Yeah,
That's
it still gives me goosebumps.
huge. It's so huge. You broke the chain. Okay. Now I want to
Well,
spend a little.
actually, I would like to share something that's pretty awesome. So it actually was my daughters and their husbands at various times who actually helped me and pointed out that this most recent marriage was so toxic.
Hmm.
When you grow up with toxicity and trauma, that if that's all you know,
Yeah.
that's all you know. So I did my best to try to find something that was better than I had before. And that always was the case, but if we don't establish a healthy relationship with ourselves and we don't educate ourselves on what is healthy, what is not healthy, we may not even realize that we're stepping right back into a situation.
Yeah.
So I think it was pretty awesome, actually, the bravery of my children and their husbands to pull me aside at different times and point out what they were noticing, because that's really what helped me get out of the situation. So
So tell me about Ayurveda, what it is,
mhm.
how you found it,
Okay.
and how, as much as you want us to know.
So Ayurveda is the science of life, where food is medicine, and essentially we should be able to open up our spice cabinet and use spices as medicine. It's also a lifestyle medicine. It originated in India over 5,000 years ago. There are some similarities between the Indian system and the Chinese system. And the way I got into it is another very interesting story. So I was reading a book about Ayurveda and the mind by Dr. David Frawley. And we had just moved into a different home. And as I was reading this book, I felt this intense pressure at the top of my head. Now, at this point, I have no awareness of things like Kundalini energy or anything like that. Okay. So I'm having this experience, and I looked at my husband at the time and I said, I really don't feel well. Something doesn't seem right. I'm going to go lay down. So I pick up my Kindle and a plastic cup that I had juice in. And as I'm walking through the room, I pass out. And the cup that I have, thank goodness it was plastic, because it hit me right underneath the chin and it broke the cup. If it was glass, it would have, cut me. And I passed out. And then all of a sudden, I was watching myself convulsing on the floor. I was watching my husband at the time running and trying to help me. And I realized, oh crap, I'm not even in my body anymore. So this was a really, really weird experience. So as this is happening, I'm watching myself, do the fish on the floor. I'm watching, my husband at the time try to help me. And then all of a sudden I'm back in my body. Well, when I open my eyes, I can't see. My hands are freezing. My feet are freezing. And he says, we should take you to the hospital. I said, no, you shouldn't move me. And I shouldn't be around people right now. I don't know how I knew that, but I just knew it. And so I asked him to go make me a piece of toast with honey, very specific. And I ate that. And then I fell asleep. In my dream state, I was all of a sudden I was in India in a cave. Now, mind you, I have never been to India. So here I am, I'm in a cave and I'm meeting with this old yogi who's got white hair and he's in his robes. And he says, the only way you're going to heal yourself is through Ayurveda. Well, I knew somewhat of what Ayurveda was from the book I was reading. So I woke up and I did a search. And it just so happened there was an academy and an Ayurvedic doctor, we call that a Vaidya, that was 10 minutes from where we just moved. So I thought, okay. So I intended to follow that trail, but first I needed to go to the emergency room, make sure, everything in the brain was okay, because I was super sensitive. I noticed that all of my senses were heightened. Anytime I was around someone, I was picking up all of their stuff, so to speak, even more than I, already was before. And it just seemed like I was really overwhelmed with everything. So they did all the tests. It wasn't a stroke, no epilepsy, didn't show any signs of a seizure, even though my body clearly was having a moment. And they said the only thing is there's a lesion on your left hippocampus. No, hypothalamus. One of those two, I can't remember. But they said because you have a history of migraines, we don't know if that was already there. It's okay, fair enough. So then they do a brainwave test, and my brain waves were really slow. They said we usually see this in elderly clients. And they said, but we still don't understand why. So anyway, go home. They diagnosed it as a spell. That was the Western diagnosis. And so I thought to myself, well, maybe I need to find a witch doctor because I had a spell. I thought that was funny. They didn't. And of course, I didn't, as I started to share with them the out of body experience and the look on their face, I quickly realized they're going to send me the psych ward. Just stop talking now. So I stopped. And so I sought out, this Ayurvedic doctor, and his name was Dr. J, or Dr. Jayarajan Kodikanath is his full name, at Kerala Ayurveda Academy. And so I walked in, I started explaining what happened. And he took 90 minutes with me. And I was an emotional mess. I had no control of my emotions. Everything was right there at the surface. And so he just gently pushed a tissue box toward me and he said, no, keep going. He encouraged the emotions to keep coming. And I thought, well, this is odd. Because nobody does that.
Yeah.
And after I got done telling him everything, he said, okay, I have a plan for you. And I completely trusted this man. Now, for me to trust a man takes a lot. And I just knew this is the guy I'm going to trust. And that was nine years ago. Yeah, almost 10 years ago. And I left that appointment and I went to the front desk and I realized, oh, this is an academy. I'd love to learn more about what's going on with me. So it was for my own reasons that I wanted to learn this science. Well, just so happens I already have a healing practice. So guess what? You can easily bring all of those things in. And I was excited. I was talking to people about it, and so before I knew it, I finished the counselor program. I was on to being a practitioner. There was this opportunity to travel with my teacher to go to India for the first time. That was fabulous. And then I waited after I became a practitioner for years for them to roll out the doctor program, just waiting. And when they did, I was one of the first 20 students in the United States to be part of this doctor program, which was the first one in the United States, which was pretty awesome. And here I am today.
All right. Okay. So my next question is abundance beyond trauma.
Yes.
Why abundance?
So in my experience, abundance is a mindset, the ability to find, well, basically abundance in everything that you're doing. Yeah. It's not really about what you have, although those things can come, but it's really about, do you feel abundant within yourself when you have none of those external things that validate us, like money, the clothes, you name it.
Yeah.
Because when I grew up and through many of my relationships, there was this feeling of lack within myself, lack within the relationship, always searching for more. And I thought, this is really the problem, is that when we, and maybe it's a human problem, really, it's not specific to trauma. But when you've been through trauma, you have this feeling of lack.
Yeah.
You're not good enough. You're somehow damaged, things like that. How could I keep a job if I, have flashbacks and triggers and things like that? So for me, when I, was really contemplating on this title, I was like, what is it that I'm trying to convey? And it is the essence of abundance. It doesn't mean you're not going to have negativity, but it's how you're relating with life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I absolutely love it. So the book comes with a workbook, and the clients get the book and the workbook, and they can go through it. They can do self-study, or they meet with you and you guide them.
It happens in various ways. You can find the book and the workbook on Amazon. I often will gift the workbook to clients because it's not required that you read the book. The book is partially my story, and I've kept it, as PG as possible so it won't create trauma for others.
Yeah.
It was more about showing what trauma does to the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you behave, so that people had a better understanding of what might be going on with themselves. And then I share about the process, that has been organically coming to fruition throughout, these past 20 years, and then go through that. And then also shared about Ayurveda and case studies for the process. But the workbook is really all of the worksheets that you need, including the trauma trigger time loop commitment, where basically you commit to yourself that you are going to go in and rescue all of those parts that, have experienced that trauma, that are reliving that trauma, and you're going to reclaim them and take ownership of them. And I feel like that, and that's like the very first page, and that is the commitment. The subtitle is discovering your courage for change and commitment to yourself. That is the most important, because if we don't work on the relationship that we have with ourselves, it's going to determine everything with, our other relationships, communities, and the world. And look what's going on in the world. If we don't fix the war within, we're still going to continue to have war without. When are we going to realize this?
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So the most powerful question I'm going to ask, I think your story is amazing and beautiful, and I'm so honored to be sharing. To everyone that's listening, to every woman that's listening and is relating to your story, what do you want to say to her?
oh, I want to say that anything is possible. Anything. You just have to believe it. And sometimes you have to continually tell yourself what you want to believe in order to believe it. But anything is possible. Yeah.
I love it. And now share again where we can find you.
Goodbyetension.com is my website, and you can find Abundance Beyond Trauma, the book, and the workbook on Amazon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.